not much happens down here. That is why, when it does happen, you really sit up and take notice. That is why the animal action is one of the real highlights down here, because often it's the only thing going on. The protocol with this is I've got to stop my vehicle within 100 metres. I can approach within 10 metres, and that's as close as I can get to the seal unless it comes towards me, which seems unlikely. I assume in the old days, 100 years ago, there were a lot more seals, of course essential for meat, and they burnt the blubber for fuel and for light. And of course, for a long time, until about 20 years ago, they had working dogs down here, even at Scott Base, they had huskies. But in the end, they stopped having the dogs because they were slaughtering too many seals to feed them. So no dogs, but seals. I just want to get in there and give him a little bit of a scratch on the stomach. And I think he wants me to as well. Mind you, that's where Steve Irwin got into trouble, getting too close to animals. He was out in Antarctica swimming and touching them and all sorts of stuff, but took too many chances. Hello. Hello.
Music Radio, AFAN, McMurdo.
And the weather forecast at South Pole Station. They've got 200 feet visibility in blowing snow, winds out of the north at 25 knots, and a wind chill factor of minus 40 degrees Celsius, and that's at South Pole Station.
American Forces Radio.
P.W. McQuillan in the morning? Yuck.
American Forces Radio.
It's True Story time on AFAN Radio. It seems that one of the contract employees from McMurdo went over to visit New Zealand's Scott Base to see the dogs there. Now, while the dog handler was...
Go on, dog.
Here we are, this is Scott Base 86 with the dogs out on the edge of the sea ice in front of the base there, spanned out.
Samoyeds or huskies?
Well, husky is really a generic term for a dog that pulls a sledge.
Okay.
These guys, essentially Greenland huskies.
So you wouldn't have to get them to move, they'd move straight away. You had a metal stake, did you, in the ground?
Yeah, just an ice axe in the back.
Yeah.
And essentially, if you went on the sledge when that axe came out, you might as well go back to base. You'd miss the boat. They were away.
They just ate ice, did they?
Just eat snow.
Yeah.
So it took me a little while to cotton onto this. You'd go out on a trip on the sea ice and you'd be heading in this direction and you'd get the lead dog kind of set up, working where he's going, and he'd be just weaving all over the place. And you'd think he was pretty useless, but what he'd actually do is just look ahead and pick a patch of snow on the ice, and you'd see them run over the snow. And as they went over, they'd all reach down, grab a mouthful of snow, and he'd look up and see where the next patch is, and then he'd head off over there.
And when you took them out overnight, they'd be quite just happy to sleep on the ice.
They slept out all year round.
Even at Scott Base, they slept out.
Various dog handlers over the years thought, this ain't cool, we'll build them some kennels, and you'd have a dog on 10 foot of chain, and you'd have a kennel over there, and you'd have a dog sleeping on the snow 10 feet away from it. They didn't like being in the enclosed space because I think they felt they might get trapped. And so they'd curl up in the snow would blow in over their coats and form an insulating blanket over them. They'd stick their tail over their nose, curl up for the night.
But the dogs were no longer of use when you were down there, they'd sort of...
Not really. I mean, even as early as 64, New Zealand had ordered the first skidoos for down there, which I was there 86, 87, so a long time before that. I mean, dogs are a great way to travel. It's a lot of fun, but if you're trying to move a scientific group around quickly, much quicker to do it in a helicopter. So in fact, the year before I was there, the dog handler, Richard Barman, found himself put in quite a difficult position where someone had made a decision that the thing to do might be to put the dogs down. And I'm glad that didn't happen to me. But Richard actually packed up the sledge and the tent and a radio and the dogs and shot through. Went round the corner somewhere from Scott Base anyway and called up and said that when some reasonable assurance was given that the dogs weren't going to be put down, that he'd be happy to come back. The dog era is over in Antarctica now, and it was really cool to be able to be part of that.
Yeah.
Even if it was just a little tail end. And you know, I'd love to go back there and fly, which is what I do now. But if all things were equal and I could go to Antarctica and fly or go and drive a dog team, I wouldn't be flying. Flying or driving a skidoos down there is about a means of getting to a destination. Driving a dog team's a journey, and there's a lot of difference. There's a lot of difference. There's a few dozen guys that definitely know the difference, that's for sure.
On Scott's last and fateful journey to Antarctica, he took 33 dogs, 30 Samoyeds, 2 Huskies, and a Border Collie. 8 dogs came back, including this dog in the Littleton Museum. It's a Samoyed. He's called Deke, which is Russian for the wild one, and he's special because he really is the only link in the world with one of Scott's dogs. Bizarre to stuff a dog, though. Like, where's the rest of it? Because it looks like a hunting trophy, like someone shot it and mounted it. But what happened, it came back and it was given to a doctor in Canterbury who looked after it for several years, and when it died, obviously he had it stuffed and then it was given to the museum. So what Scott Base really is just one long corridor with about 5 buildings joined together, and it's all sort of, it's like a fridge, and it's all made of fridge freezer material, and that's so the cold stays out. And this temperature here is always about 18 degrees. As you can see, jeans, we've got mandals and a t-shirt, and that's sort of the weather the whole time. And not only is Scott Base one long corridor, it's also one long shoe rack. Everyone gets issued with a pair of mucklucks. I think that's an Eskimo word. Well, it's not an Aboriginal word, is it? They would be wearing mucklucks. So you get an inner muckluck, an outer muckluck, and a pair of Sorel boots. Now, you can't wear those around the food area, so every time you come in, you've got to take your boots off and dump them in these racks. This is the boot exchange point. Here, I'm allowed boots. There, I'd have to have my boots off. So it's like boots, no boots. As a result, there's probably 200 pairs of shoes throughout the building, and your shoes go missing. So if you do ever get the chance to come to Scott Base, get yourself a pair of coloured ribbon and tie on the back, because you'll thank me 1,000 times. You'll be wandering around the corridor, you think, pink ribbon, they're my mucklucks. So first day you're in there in your boots, they'd probably look at you a bit of strange. Second day you'd say, Lushy, get your boots out. So boots, no boots. You're doing well, you're getting the hang of it. Karori Cemetery, Wellington. And this is a bit special because it's home to a really important and neat Antarctic connection. The grave of Harry McNeish, a member of the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition, 1914-17. He accompanied Shackleton on his epic boat journey from Elephant Island to South Georgia.
Shackleton revived an earlier ambition, an expedition to cross the Antarctic from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea, 1,800 miles.
Harry McNeish joined Shackleton in the crew of the Endurance in the role of ship's carpenter and master shipwright. As McNeish was preparing for the trip in his hometown of Glasgow in Scotland, he found his cat curled up in one of his toolboxes as though the cat was determined to be included on the trip. McNeish was very fond of the cat anyway and decided to take him. It turned out Shackleton was very happy to have the cat on board, giving them the role of chief wreck catcher. The cat became very popular with the crew, and because he had a tendency to follow McNeish around like an overpossessive wife, he was given the name Mrs. Chippy, a name which stuck even when they found out he was a tomcat. The fortunes of Shackleton's ship, the Endurance, and ultimately Mrs. Chippy changed when they reached Antarctica. The boat became stuck in pack ice. Despite the best efforts of the crew, it became obvious that the ship would never be released from her icy grave. Mrs. Chippy not a great fan of the ice because it tended to get lodged in the pads of his paws, descended to the relative peace and calm of the lower decks. Even as the force of the pack ice started to break the Endurance up, Mrs. Chippy remained loyal to his ship, doggedly staying aboard as it fell around his ears.
Is that when Shackleton decides to kill the cat?
Not immediately, because there were 8 months on the ice waiting to see what was going to happen and the ship to break up. But once they decided on this wild scheme of dragging 3 ship's boats to the edge of the ice so that they could undertake a voyage to the nearest land, then anybody or anything that was not needed was disposed of, and a cat would be the last thing they needed. As far as I can gather, McNeish was told, but he wasn't very pleased about it, and he just went and sulked in the tent and waited till it was all over.
Although mourning the loss of Mrs. Chippy, McNeish's skills became instrumental in the success of Shackleton's mission. He was put to work and with the limited resources of the Antarctic continent managed to repair the ship's safety boat, the James Caird, which they dragged vast distances across the pack ice and then sailed at 800 miles to a whaling station at Strongness on South Georgia.
He did a splendid job. There's no doubt his skill saved everybody.
But despite McNeish's vital role in this, his stubborn insistence on working a 40-hour week rubbed Shackleton up the wrong way.
During the dragging of the boats over the ice, he refused to continue, saying that Shackleton had no right to instruct him to do anything, as his contract had ceased to exist with his sinking of the ship. And Shackleton took out his revolver and threatened to shoot him. So McNeish, of course, continues the work. And because of his disobedience to Shackleton on the trip, Shackleton refused to recommend him for a Polar Medal, although quite frankly, he's probably one person of all of them that should have been certainly considered. I'm sure it was a sore point with him for the rest of his life.
McNeish also remained bitter about the loss of his beloved Mrs. Chippy right into old age, as is clear from Baden's childhood recollections of meeting the man.
I can remember going into the room and seeing this very pale man speaking what I'd call a funny accent, which I now know was Scottish, and he propped himself up on one elbow and looked at me and simply said, "Shackleton shot my cat," and then sunk back into the pillow and didn't say much else beyond that.
McNeish died in 1930 as a man of humble means, and his grave bore no mark until 29 years later, when in 1959 the Antarctic Society raised a headstone for him. Then in 2004, the ultimate tribute, Baden and a small band of McNeish fans raised the funds to commission and place a sculpture of the man's favourite companion on his grave.
And this is Mrs. Chippy, and she's just a real delight. I guess it's hard to know what old McNeish would have thought with all the effort they've gone to. He didn't get the Polar Medal, but he has got a $6,000 statue of his cat on his grave. It's pretty nice that him dying a pauper, that all these people have gone to all this special attention. But it's a really lifelike, although I never saw the cat, and beautiful sculpture. And it's cool because it's just resting on the grave like a real cat would, basking in the sun.
One of the most compelling things about the Antarctic is the wildlife. The whales, the seals, the penguins. Because so few people get the chance to see them, it's a real privilege to be involved in the wildlife research, particularly with the penguins.
And I'm going to get a chance to get close to these little guys, flying out to the Cape Verde penguin colony for a couple of days. And despite working on my mojo, I haven't been working on my penguin preparedness, and I'm in for a surprise.
Holy guacamole. That's incredible. I mean, I knew I'd see penguins, but I didn't realise there would be that many in one valley. I just thought there'd be 4 or 5 in a Scotty nest, but that would have to be one of, well, perhaps the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not one that's prone to exaggeration, but that is phenomenal. And it doesn't, in some ways, it doesn't look real. It looks like computer-generated animation, as though it's the movie Troy where they've rallied the troops together and it looks not quite real, slightly fake, because there's just so many damn penguins. Maybe 100,000, maybe 50,000. Certainly a Palmerston North, maybe a Hamilton. It's just phenomenal. And they walk like penguins as though they've got baggy pants that have sort of slipped down. And the icebergs and the blue and the sunny day, and I'm not going to cry, but that's pretty moving. Shades of Honolulu. I've blown my mind. In a good way.
And they're not just sitting around waiting for their agents to call for their next chip commercial. These Adelie penguins lead tremendously busy lives. Every October, the males arrive at the Cape and begin building rock nests. The females arrive a few days later and the mating season begins. Parenting is shared. The female lays 2 eggs and then goes back to the sea to feed while dad sits on the nest. After 36 days, the eggs hatch. They take turns feeding and minding the chicks until the sea starts to freeze, signalling the start of winter. The parents then leave the chicks to fend for themselves and head 2,000 kilometres towards their winter feeding ground. The hungry chicks must then head to sea if they are to survive. Only 20% of them will survive to return to the nest next summer. Kerry Barton has been studying this colony for 13 years.
These are your classic commercial-looking penguin, aren't they? They're the ones that have been exploited.
Yeah, but they're also really dynamic. Like when you're in a colony, there's always something happening. And I guess we're all a bit anthropomorphic as well. We can imagine them like the birds in the tuxedos, and they're very staunch about how they raise their chicks and stuff. So they're all qualities that we like to think people have as well. So yeah, I mean, for us, we're really interested in them as animals and what they tell us about the environment down here and stuff like that. But it's quite hard if you just see all their behaviours and stuff not to think they're pretty special.
So you can't help to go gaga about them, is that right?
Oh, I think you've got to give up if you're not gaga about them. So what we're going to do is randomly select a chick, and I'm going to measure their flipper, which is an indication of age. And then I'm going to weigh them, which just sort of tells us how well the parents are feeding them.
Who's keeping the adults at bay?
I'm going to just take them out from under the adult. The adult will stay on the nest.
Oh, okay.
There's a chick here that we've randomly selected, so I'll get you to stay here.
And you'll bring the chick back here. And I'll hold the chick and then you put it in the bag and we'll weigh it.
Yeah, and we'll measure its flipper.
For how old it is.
Yeah. Okay?
Go for your life. Do you want my gloves off?
Well, it's a better experience for you. Okay, what I need you to do is put this hand flat.
Yeah.
And we're just going to put them on your hand and tuck them into your body. Yeah.
Oh. Do you want
They're gorgeous, aren't they?
measure a flipper?
Yep, and so I'll just slide this around here. Just put this little flipper against it. 75.
Wells, yep.
Yep.
Which is how old?
Oh, it should be 2 weeks, I think, this one.
Oh, gee, they put on weight, don't they?
No, we're just going to turn the lights off for a wee while. And just pop him in this little bag. So if you just want to slide his butt into the little bag.
But first,
Yep. So,
keep its flippers in.
and down. And the weight just tells us how much food they're getting from their parents. Okay, and he's 590 grams.
Oh, yeah, heavier than I thought. They're warm.
Yeah, very warm. It's the best thing to do is be the chick handler.
Yeah.
I'll just go and pop him back with his parents.
It was great. It was like holding nothing I've ever held before because it wasn't feathery like a chicken or like a budgerigar. It was more like a soft toy you'd win from one of those grabbing things. It was like fur, but really warm. It's sort of cute. Like a very warm, wrapped in fur pound of butter, but a different shape.
We are now going to remove a radio transmitter from an adult penguin. Kerry puts her hat on the penguin chicks to make sure they don't get taken by marauding skuas.
It's all right. need you to do is just put your finger between the two back legs.
Yeah, gloves on, all right. Yep.
And just put her under your arm like me. And then just keep it pressed against your body.
Is that about right?
Yep.
This is your $5,000 tag, is it?
Yep. So it's quite a good one to get back.
This is a bird that's gone out and you've weighed how much it's eating?
No, this is a bird that's, we've put a device on and it's actually telling us where she's foraging.
The flippers are really bone-like, aren't they? They're like wooden paddles.
And if you can sort of just keep an eye over my shoulder as well and just make sure that head's staying over our little friends.
Yeah,
there's no birds interfering with it.
There's a bird taking the rocks, but
as long as they're not interfering with
he's doing it really subtly.
We just have to hope, because she's quite a nervy bird, that she's going to go back on her chicks all right. Easy. Easy. Good kid. Easy. Shh, shh, shh. Good girl.
Good mum, eh? Straight back.
And she'll be much happier now she doesn't have my things stuck on her.
When I was a child, before reality shows and survivor shows and how every sort of documentary needs to have a competition aspect, on a Sunday night, our family always watched wildlife documentaries. I was riveted, I was fascinated. I haven't had much to do with animals since. To come down here, to hold a penguin in my bare hands and to hold an adult penguin, I realised once again how fascinated with that stuff I am. I don't come across colonies of penguins in my life as a broadcaster. Sheep, but not penguins. It was nice to hold a baby penguin. Little cute thing down there, yeah. Yeah.
We've currently got the lowest road toll in 40 years for the Christmas period, so that's good news. I hope those penguins stay 10 metres away from you, over.
Yeah, except the ones we removed from the nest and cuddled, but that was under strict supervision. Over.
Roger that, Marcus. Have a good night tonight. Nothing further from Scott Post. Anything from you guys? Over.
No, we're good, thanks, Lisa. Cape Bird listening.
There's a lot to like down here. Not much not to like. I'd like to get a nice wife, though. So Pringles for snacks. I think it's because of the rigidity of the tube, like it's an idiot-proof chip. No, just the Scotch eggs are just back at the base, no Scotch eggs in the field. I don't think we can take the Scotch eggs in the field because they're paranoid about the penguins. No, I don't think the penguin would eat a Scotch egg. I think it's more that, well, I suppose you could Scotch a penguin egg. I think it's more because there could be an avian virus in the Scotch egg and the penguins could catch it.